Happy New Year's to everybody and welcome back to the board office. To start off, we call to order this meeting and checking with attendance. We have all trustees present. We have both trustee Luz Del Rosario and trustee Mario Pascucci online. Only trustee not present as of now is trustee Herman Valorio. If I could please ask everyone to stand up. We're going to be starting with our opening prayer.
In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, amen. I know you are my heavenly Father, who can provide me with everything I need. You know my needs before I even ask you for them. Thank you, Lord, for your new beginnings and unwavering provision. I trust that your peace will watch over me as I step into a new year. St. John Bosco, pray for us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.
Next, we move on to the land acknowledgement. The land is beautiful, powerful, and silent. A witness to the beauty of creation, the land itself, the sky, the water, the plants, the animals, and us, the people. The land is also a calling to be mindful that we live together and that we do so with care and respect for all, interconnected and interdependent. We are stewards of resources, including our personal resources, and build on them to enrich our lives and those of others. In its silence, the land is also a quiet reminder of past glories and injustices. We don't ignore either. We celebrate the glories and we reflect on the injustices so as to learn from them and not to repeat them. Our land acknowledgement today is a call to action, to move away from doing harm and working as a worldwide community on Turtle Island. We are each encouraged to make a personal commitment on this day, in this moment, for today and always. As always, we thank the Mississaugas of the Credit, our treaty partners, who have been stewards of this land for generations. Together, we commit to beauty and peace and to fight injustice and actively, passionately, resolutely create a future with hope. Thank you. Next, we are moving on to the approval of the agenda. On the top sheet, we have a revised G4 report. There are a few corrections with page 11's terms of reference should read 2025 and page 29, the second bullet should read in grade 1, 44% of students are performing at or above benchmark, demonstrating strong foundational reading skills in phonem segmentation and word readings. We also will be adding good news items to our agenda. Could I get a mover to add good news items? Moved by trustee Bria Corbett. All trustees in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, we will be adding good news items to our agenda. Next, we move on to item A5, which is our declarations of interest.
Through the chair, you need to approve the agenda.
Could I get a mover for the approval of the agenda? Moved by trustee Stefano Pascucci. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. All right, next we move on to declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest tonight? Seeing none. Next, we're moving to the approval of the minutes from the Faith and Program Committee meeting of October 8th, 2024. Can I get a mover for the approval? Moved by trustee Thomas. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. There are no business arising from the minutes. Next, we move on to item B, which is our proposed terms of reference for 2025. Director Mazzarato.
Through the chair, the proposed terms of reference for this committee can be found on page 10. The only notation as notated on the top sheet is that it should read 2025. These terms of reference have not changed since last year. There's a motion there for the Board of Trustees to approve and adopt the terms of reference. Make a recommendation to the adopt the terms of reference.
Could I get a mover to approve the terms of reference? Moved by trustee Daryl D'Souza. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Next, we move on to item. Next we move on to item C, which is awards and presentations. And today we are truly honored to have Giselle Gale, a motivational speaker. She's a constant inspiration who champions acceptance and inclusion, here to present with us, and being a past graduate from Christ the King myself, and Giselle being a graduate of Christ the King. And at the time both of us were at Christ the King, Director Mazzarato was actually our principal. So seeing how the world revolves, at this time, I welcome Giselle to present to us.
Thank you. Yes. Through the chair,
Sorry.
good. Yes.
I'm so sorry to just interrupt. I think we're just waiting on ICT to set the screens up for you.
Okay. I'll just do the intro in the meantime. Before. Okay. Oh, but they need to see Giselle's presentation.
All right. Thank you once again to Giselle for that presentation. We are back live with everyone. So thank you to those online for joining us. And we're back now to our Faith and Program Committee meeting. Continuing with our meeting, we're moving forward to item D. We have no delegations this evening. Our next item is item E, which is updates, information reports from trustees for receipt, starting with number 1, regular reports. Reports from the Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association report. Seeing as I am the representative from Oxta here, just a quick update from the OCSTA. We do have our seminar this Friday happening. So hope trustees are able to attend. It is a great seminar with various presenters. All right, next we move up to E2, which is our good news items. Do we have any good news items? Trustee Corbett?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chairman. Good news item from yesterday on January 13th was National Rubber Ducky Day and was celebrated in Dufferin Peel Elementary Schools with fun activities in math and literacy for our students. All senior kindergarten classes were supplied with rubber duckies for counting activities. All grade 1 students were invited to participate in a rubber ducky writing contest that shows off their creativity in poetry or stories. All schools were sent a jar of baby rubber duckies for estimating games that the program math team lead in a live streaming math session for each division. Our junior and intermediate students learned some fun facts related to rubber ducks. For example, the impact of an incident of a shipment of 28,000 duckies that went overboard in 1992. And for the last 20 years has actually helped scientists track ocean currents. Students also learned and looked at microplastics and rubber as part of our ongoing effort to showcase the importance and excitement that science and technology can offer.
Thank you very much, Trustee Corbett. Along with your presentation, student trustee Gia Sharma actually has a rubber ducky right beside her name tag, and as well in appreciation of rubber duckies. And I'm assuming you're going to be pulling out a rubber ducky as well. I'm hoping that we all get one shortly. Do we have any other good news items? Seeing no good news, other good news items, we move on to item F. We have no updates, information reports from committees for receipt. Moving to item G for updates, information reports from administration for receipt with G1 or 2023-2024 Catholic Board Improvement Learning Cycle fact sheets for public receipt. I give it forward to Executive Superintendent Veccarino.
Good evening, everyone, and continuing through you, Mr. Chair. As we do every year at around this time, we present what we have come to call our fact sheets, and this report begins on page 13 of your agenda package and proceeds from there. It is our opportunity to report back formally to trustees on the progress that has been made towards your multi-year strategic plan 2023 to 2027, and this highlights the results of our 2023-2024 school year. Trustees would have already seen a good 80% of this information. It was included, as it always is, in the director's annual report. We present it in its entirety to you this evening. I would be pleased, as always, to take any questions. Some quick note, and this is from the middle of page 13, in terms of revisions that have been made based on previous year's work and our initial presentation. We've just standardized our format, removed some of the colors that we've used over the past. As always, we share as much of our data as possible and provide easy access or relatively easy access visuals for use by the community. Once this report has been received this evening, it will be shared, as it always is, with all trustees for use in whatever setting, and it will also be posted on our board website as part of a ministerial requirement. As always, I'd be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Executive Veccarino. Executive Superintendent Veccarino, do we have any questions in reference to the report? Seeing no questions, once again, thank you very much. Next, we move on to our next item, which is item G2, a systematic approach to supporting students' reading development in Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board. Superintendent Murphy.
Good evening, and through the chair, The report is found on pages 28 to 30 of your agenda. In 2019, the Ontario Human Rights Commission initiated an inquiry into how children are taught to read in our province to address disparities in children's success in learning to read. Reading is a fundamental right. The Ontario Human Rights Commission released 157 recommendations centering on a focus on explicit, systematic phonics and decoding instruction and a more structured approach to teaching reading comprehension. In response to the Right to Reading Inquiry Report, the Ministry of Education revised the Ontario Language Arts curriculum in 2023, replacing its version from 2006. Evidence-based reading practices are fundamental to the work. The ministry is also going to be updating its kindergarten curriculum sometime this year to align it with the new curriculum that it created in 2023. The ministry also released PPM 168, Policy Program Memorandum, that mandates 30 minutes of uninterrupted language curriculum every day for grades 1 to 3, and the implementation of a reading screener to be administered to all students in kindergarten through grade 2 to identify early signs of reading challenges and allow for timely intervention. Students across our board were screened initially in November, and those who do not meet the benchmark are to be screened again in March. Our coordinator of elementary curriculum will now present information on the implementation of the screener in our board.
In response to PPM 168, in response to PPM 168,
If you just click that button in front of you.
okay, we'll use this one. So in response to the PPM 168 and the mandate to screen all students kindergarten year 2 to grade 2, Program and Learning Services began training in administering the early reading screener in the spring of 2024 to all classroom teachers K-2. This Acadience training introduced teachers to the purpose of the screeners and how to administer the required measures to students. In addition to the training in the spring, all teachers were provided with a second session for Acadience in October of 2024. This time, the focus was on the analysis of the data from the screener and how to plan next steps to support students who might be at risk for reading difficulties. A total of 835 classroom teachers and support staff were trained in both Part 1 and Part 2, equipping them with the necessary tools and strategies to use the Acadience screener effectively. Program and Learning Services recognized that to administer the screener effectively, teachers would need release time and took a proactive approach to providing this release time. A team of coordinators, consultants, facilitators, and occasional teachers were dispatched to all elementary schools from November 4th to the 15th to provide release to 735 kindergarten to grade 2 teachers in the system and ensure that over 11,000 students were assessed to ensure timely intervention if needed. The results from the screeners provided schools and programs valuable and the program department valuable insight into the early literacy development that is happening in Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board. There are 5 measures that assess the foundational reading skills. At each grade level, a combination of different measures are used. The possible outcomes are to at benchmark, above benchmark, below benchmark, or well below benchmark, indicating various levels of risk for future reading challenges. These measures provide a comprehensive understanding of a student's reading development so teachers can tailor instruction for specific needs. The results of the screener indicate a probability or likelihood that a student will be at risk for reading difficulties in the future if instructional practices are not adjusted. The results from the screener reflect a positive trend in early literacy development across Dufferin Peel. In kindergarten, the screener measured phonemic awareness and letter sound recognition. 80% of our students were performing at or above the benchmark. In grade 1, The screener measures decoding and fluency. 44% of our students were performing at or above the benchmark. In grade 2, the screener measures reading comprehension and more complex decoding abilities. 65% of our students were performing at or above the benchmark.
Conclusion, the program department is continuing to provide professional development, resources, and release to support our teachers in providing effective instruction to all students. This concludes the report, and we're happy to answer any questions regarding this material. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Do I have any questions from trustees? Trustee Stefano Pascucci?
Thank you very much to you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the report. Appreciate it. Out of curiosity, are the findings, if a child is found to be below the benchmark, well below benchmark or at the benchmark, or in risk of not being, I guess, above the benchmark or at the benchmark, that information is obviously provided to parents and something that can be done at home, possibly. Is it possible to have this information also provided to other parents as well, where children are excelling? And the reason why I ask is, as a parent of 2 children, both within the pandemic times, so they had a little bit of different educational experience as my older one did. My younger one was sort of junior kindergarten. Is it possible to, give parents information as to where their children are? Only because, as a parent myself, I'm always looking at, okay, well, what does this mean? What does this letter mean? What does this number mean? Below, above, whatever it is. So is it possible to give parents some information, parent-teacher nights, whatever it is, so that at least if anything can be done at home, that they can excel afterwards?
Through the chair, we are required on the report cards to indicate whether or not a student who has been screened has passed the screening or is required to redo the screening because we're seeing that there's potential for at-risk lapse in their learning. That, combined with the report card, should provide a lot of information to parents about where the child's reading skill set is. We also have to recognize that when we do this screening, it's at the beginning of the year as the students are coming in, settling into their classes, settling into the routine. Our staff is settling into a very new approach, very systematic approach to reading. So when we put all that information together, teachers, principals should be having informed conversations with parents about what the plan is to support them with the literacy. In addition, right now, program is organizing Tier 2 support for all our grade 2 students that we feel may benefit from extra instruction. We're using the program Empower to help those at-risk students achieve a score in the second reading screening in March that will indicate that they are more in line with the expectations for the developmental group and age and stage at that time. So the conversations that parents would have with their teachers, with their progress reports and the report cards should inform, because a screener is just one piece of information to show a parent and a teacher what the gaps are or where the needs are for that child's learning and reading.
That's perfect. Thank you very much for the information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Trustee Stefano Pascucci. Any other questions from trustees? Seeing no questions, thank you very much for the presentation. We're moving on to our next item, which is item G3, transforming education, integrating artificial intelligence in the Dufferin Catholic District School Board. Once again, Superintendent Murphy.
Thank you. Through the chair, this report is found in your agenda on pages 31 through 33. Artificial intelligence is clearly transforming the world we live in and offers significant and profound opportunities to revolutionize education. Artificial intelligence will enable more personalized learning, efficiencies in education, and innovations in learning, assessment, and pedagogy. With all the promise that AI offers, Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board also recognizes the challenges inherent in AI, those of privacy, copyright, protection of our students online and in programs, staff and ethical concerns that may impact teaching and learning as AI becomes more and more prevalent in the world, seamlessly part of our everyday experience. Our board is committed to a critical address of the adoption of artificial intelligence to ensure it manifests as a tool that builds equity, innovation, and integrity in a Catholic education. The emergence of ChatGPT in November of 2022 marks a significant moment of artificial intelligence in education for teachers and students. The program department responded to the initial concerns that ChatGPT posed for academic integrity and instructional practices with professional development that explained generative artificial intelligence and identified its strengths and its limitations. We elevated Pope Francis's message to align artificial intelligence with our Catholic social teachings. The program department released the Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board AI guidelines for educations in November of 2023, using current research and considering best practices from post-secondary institutions. I'm very proud to say that these guidelines have been sought after by many other boards. Our department reviews these guidelines regularly, especially as new innovations are presented to us about AI, and in light of these emerging developments, are continually updating these guidelines. A section of our SharePoint is responding to AI information and tools for professional development, lessons, and activities for our students. I'm now going to ask Coordinator of Technology-Enabled Learning, Lisa Busick, to discuss with you some of the work that we've done in our professional development, our projects, and what our next steps are in addressing and keeping up with artificial intelligence in education.
Thank you. Through the chair, we have also supported educators through professional development, as Superintendent Carmel Murphy mentioned. We've supported them on provincial professional activity days, and also through a 4-part professional learning series that we've developed. So to date, we have done worked through 2 of 4 parts that we're using to support our educators in developing a foundational understanding of AI. The first part that we did was really about helping educators to understand what AI is, how it works, what it can do, but also to really think about the ethical considerations that we need to have, and in particular around protecting student privacy. So that was part 1. Part 2, we focused more on what teachers can do in a world of AI to make sure that we're maintaining academic integrity for our students. So we looked at how do we adapt our pedagogy, our instructional practice to meet AI where it is in our world today. Part 3, I know our teachers are really excited for this part. Now we're going to start to look at how can teachers actually use AI tools to support teaching and learning in their classroom. And there's a lot of potential for teachers. So I think they're really looking forward to unpacking that with us. We'll focus specifically on prompt engineering as a part of that. So how to engage effectively with AI. And then part 4, as soon as a tool becomes available that's safe for student use, we will be supporting our students with direct PD around how they can leverage AI as a thinking partner, because that's really how it's intended to be used. So when we can work with them to support AI as a study buddy or a thinking partner that they can use to improve learning, that would be our 4th part of our series. We also had a really unique opportunity to work with C21 and Dell to participate in an AI use case. So what Dufferin-Peel decided to do, the Program and Learning Services Department, with the direction of our director, we decided to create a persona prompt guide. So essentially what we did is we created a persona, essentially that's, we made ours, it's called Mrs. DF Reads, because it's a reading, it was for reading. And what you do is teachers enter prompts into the persona that we created, and they can actually engage with the AI as a thinking partner to help them come up with differentiating instruction strategies that they can use to support students based on the screener. So as Ms. Quintana mentioned, the Acadian screener, so we're looking at leveraging AI to support teachers in developing differentiating plans by having discussions with this persona that we created. So that's the project. We are in the early stages of testing, so our next step will be to pilot it in some grade 2 classrooms so that we can evaluate its effectiveness and also take a look at its scalability moving forward and what is it like from a teacher use perspective and the impact on students. So that's where we stand with that. So where do we go next? We have lots of things on our plans, but I think the most importantly is we're looking at launching Copilot. So Copilot is a generative AI tool similar to ChatGPT or to Gemini, and that would be the tool that we would like to use to support teachers with getting started with AI in their classrooms.
And this release will be accompanied by teacher training, specifically around student privacy and ethics when starting to engage with AI in a classroom. We're also going to pilot some additional tools, small groups, so we can get a sense of how they work with students and how they work with teachers to get a real sense of, are they effective and how are students using them and how does it actually benefit students? We're going to look at developing some student resources. So we've spent beginning of our time working to support our educators because we need to make sure that we all have a foundational understanding of how to use AI to support students. And now the next step is to kind of catch our students up and make sure that they understand what AI is and how to use it effectively to support their learning. And then lastly, in terms of next steps, we're going to work on releasing micro videos, just short videos on really focused topics, like, for example, prompt engineering, so that we can really help target practical applications of AI for our teachers and our students.
In collaboration with ICT and in partnership under the leadership of Chief Information Officer Ivana McIsaac, program will continue to navigate and promote the opportunities artificial intelligence offers our students for their education, their employment, and to ensure that their future is marked by a Catholic education that prepares them. That concludes our report, and we are happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? I'll start with Trustee Darrell D'Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through you, my question is, thank you for giving the update on AI. While my kids were in high school, I remember them using ChatGPT, which is not many years ago, to do a lot of assignments. And logically, if you use ChatGPT and if you ask for bibliography, it gives you the names of the authors or from where the article has been found. And that's not plagiarism, because you've cited the authors that you're mentioning in your assignment. If there are no authors cited and there are no authors mentioned throughout your assignment, have we found a tool that tells you that this assignment has been copied from an AI-generated source?
So through the chair, we have found that when we have looked at some of the tools that are available for us to purchase, first of all, the cost is exorbitant. And there also is a great deal of bias in those tools against students who are ELL students or students that have come from systems with different curriculum. So the reliability factor there is a bit prejudiced, and that's one of our concerns when we're dealing with AI. What we are looking at in terms of how do we address, let's say, a student's perhaps misguided use of AI in their assignment where they haven't cited it properly by author, is we're looking at really developing those citation skills in all of our courses, because when they go to university, they will be in courses, for example, if they're writing computer code. In computer code, many students will use ChatGPT for segments of the code, and there's no way to cite that. So there is a way to cite within each discipline how you have used ChatGPT, even when it doesn't have an author associated with it or an identifiable source. So we are working very hard with all our subject areas in secondary to let them know that this is the reality. Students are going to use this, so you have to teach them to use it properly so they're not plagiarizing, they're not breaking copyright, and they understand what their responsibilities are as an academic, because that has ramifications for their careers as students and also in the business world, because we know that ChatGPT is an inherent part of what's going on in many businesses and companies.
You mentioned ELL students.
Yes.
What percentage of our students are ELL? What does ELL stand for? Is it?
So ESL, ELL. So the more current term is ELL.
Yeah.
So,
So what percentage of our students are ELL?
Well, students
0.012?
that are identified, percentage, I would say
Under
at least
1%?
5 to 7%, depending.
5%?
I think we have a fairly high percentage of ESL students. I can get that exact number for you, but off the top of my head, it's a significant portion, because when we're planning for anything, we have to consider not only our special needs students in terms of the identified group, but also the impact of our ELL students. And even though we only identify students for a certain number of years as ELL, There's often ramifications for their thinking processes for how long that really is inherent as they get into higher level writing, thinking, and assignments. We will put that in issues and events.
The response to my question or the ELL percentage?
The percentage.
I mean, it's not going to be high. We're talking about like 95, 96% of our kids, especially in high school, using generative AI to do their assignments. And if there's no citation, it's not plagiarized. And I'm sure there are tools out there which can tell you that this has been created by generative AI.
So
And I
through-
think we should look at that because it's being used extensively.
So through the chair, we accept that as a reality. As a former teacher, I know my students are much smarter than I am and able to try to pull the wool over my eyes on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So really, it is my responsibility to ensure what assignments I give them challenges them not to be able to pull the wool over my eyes. So it does change the way that we think. And I never am able to keep up with my students because they're much younger and faster. And I see the smiles on their face regarding that reaction. So my job is to ensure that I'm able to run with them so that where they're running to, they recognize that even if you're not citing the author of whatever that is you're using, you're citing it as a source that you've used. And particularly with the sciences, this is going to have an impact on their future academic careers.
Yeah.
So we'll continue to work on that.
Stop going to doctors, I think, next 10 years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Trustee D'Souza. Trustee Abria Corbett. I have Trustee Bruno Iannick on the list and Trustee Iannick on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. Thanks for the informative report. It's always wonderful to hear the new and latest. I'm glad that we've done some professional development and training, and then next steps also includes the student resources. Can I also put in and ask to have some parent resources provided as well so that they align with the student resources? Because I think as we're educating our students, we know our parents are our first educators as well.
Through the chair, that will be additional work that we will elevate. And also, as we're bringing in speakers for our teachers and administrators, we are finding that our administrators are employing them on their parent nights. So we will work hard to make sure that the experts that we bring in are able to speak to a broad range of audiences and target what they need to know.
Thank you. And through the chair, do we have a policy on AI, especially when it comes down to the academic integrity and the ethics around use? Because that may be something we should consider.
So through the chair, we have our AI guidelines that we've created. We also have significant guidelines in terms of plagiarism and academic integrity. And so we'll continue to strengthen those, especially at the secondary level, subject specific, because there's very different ways of using AI to complete your work depending on the subject you're in. We'll also put that update in issues and events so that you have an understanding of where those guidelines are and also how parents can access them.
Thank you. So through the chair, so regards to a specific policy.
So through the chair, that because Growing Success is a foundational ministry document that guides us on assessment and evaluation, we would follow what that document says. So putting a policy out may be challenging because that document's being rewritten, and we've covered academic integrity through other policies within the board scope.
Sorry, we do have an existing policy around assessment and evaluation. When we bring that forward for review, it would be an opportunity to incorporate AI into it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Corbett. Next I have Trustee Iannick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just with regards to follow up to Trustee D'Souza's question about students pulling the wool over perhaps the eyes or the teacher's eyes. All you really have to do is look at some of the commercials that are around today, and there's Warren licking a envelope while he's playing around, and he sends this ridiculous text message or email to his boss, And all of a sudden, the boss reads it and looks over, and there's Warren zipping around with a string. And I think that our teachers are pretty astute, because I have heard some teachers in secondary have a conversation and say, you know, he thought I was nuts, that I believe that he could write such a thing. So our teachers are astute to knowing their student and then identifying whether they did or did not write that piece. Because if it's a C+ student writing an A+ paper, it brings to question, not always, but in some situations. I think, give our staff a little bit of credit in when they read something and 2 and 2 makes 5, something's not right.
Thank you very much, Trustee Anika. To that same point, I have Trustee Darrell D'Souza.
Actually, if you go through ChatGPT, you tell it to write something which is a A+ or a C-, it does. So ChatGPT is that advanced today. Version 4.
Thank you very much, Trustee D'Souza. Do we have any other questions in regards to this report? Student Trustee Raheem White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. If a student submits an assignment, and let's say it's an English assignment, and the AI checkers, so when I submit an assignment on D2L or Google Classroom, it says AI checker enabled or originality report, something of the sort. If that doesn't go off, but the teacher disagrees that the student wrote it, how exactly are they supposed to be disciplined?
So through the chair, program is advocating that assignments are process-based. And what that means is that as an assignment is given to a student, there are check-in points with the teacher where there's discussions, evidence produced, and conversations about what's been created, what's been produced, and what the next steps are. It is essential that that kind of collaborative relationship exists in process for assignments, because there may be occasions where temptation may have influenced pieces of what a student hands in. And I'm going to use that word because I understand, as Oscar Wilde says, that I can resist everything but temptation. So one has to be very generous in understanding that you're under a lot of pressure as a student to do good work and to get good grades. So I think as our teachers and our students understand the importance of process and collaboration, those kind of conversations will not be as stark and will not be punitive. And we have very good guidelines about how we handle students when they've gone astray. I think, speaking from my own experience with teachers, they understand the pressures you're under because we've all been under them. We understand temptation, maybe not as well as young people, but I have memories of it. And it's about encouraging you to be your best self and to do your best work, not to go, haha, I caught you. So I would put a lot of money on betting that that's the attitude that our teachers are trying to develop. Those are the relationships we want with our students, because when you go to university, when you go to college, when you go to work, if you do not have an understanding of process and how to speak to your process with your prof or your teacher or your instructor or your boss, you're not going to find yourself very successful. And our education system is built on making you successful for your future placements, not just your academic experience in Dufferin Peel, but to take that academic experience beyond and to represent. So I think that's all part of the process of what AI is influencing us as teachers and as students to do better and to understand that the days of just having facts, not going to get you anywhere. That's what Google does for you. The days of being able to apply, explain your process, think creatively, communicate, and justify what you're doing, that is what's going to guarantee you a position in life that makes your life a life well lived. And I think that's the beauty of AI, that it's changing how we think as students, and it changes how we think as teachers, how we're going to interact with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Student Trustee Raheem White. Do we have any other questions? Seeing no questions, thank you very much for the presentation this evening. Next, we're moving on to our next item, which is G3, G4, which is driving excellence with Edwin, a digital tool for engaged learning and instruction. Once again, Superintendent Murphy.
Thank you. Through the chair, this report is found on the TOPE sheets. In 2018-29 school year, Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board partnered with Nelson Publishing to pilot Edwin, their digital learning platform, or ecosystem as they called it, designed to enhance teacher instruction, student engagement, and achievement. The project covered all grades 6, 7, and 8 classes, providing each student with a Chromebook to access this Edwin learning platform. The Edwin application or ecosystem provided students and staff access to all Nelson E textbooks for all subjects, access to an extensive digital library of relevant and curated collections, videos, math tools, and interactive science tools known as PHET. And these are science-based applications and simulations like circuit boards or molecular structures or scientific experiments. The Edwin project provided an equitable, culturally responsive resource ecosystem and work repository for all of our students. The first year of implementation was a pilot project, and so the board did not incur any costs for the first year. The pilot provided each student and staff with individual hardware, Edwin licenses, and what they call white glove service to maintain the functionality of the equipment. Nelson, in partnership with our program team, provided the professional development to build teacher capacity in the digital environment. The next 2 years of partnership following the pilot year cost approximately $2.6 million. Edwin devices were pivotal in enabling our board to respond to the demands of COVID and the abrupt shift to online learning to protect the education of our students during this terrible time. Edwin devices enabled the board to meet the device per student needs when ministry funding was not sufficient. COVID also impacted the educational publishing business in that companies, in meeting the online demands of a pandemic educational environment, moved away from producing print textbooks and focused on the more cost-effective, efficient, profit-bearing digital versions. In continuing with Edwin, Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board ensured students in intermediate grades had the most current and effective curriculum materials. In 2021 to 22, the cost of Edwin increased to $3.4 million to ensure the terms of hardware, software, and white glove service. In the school years of 2022-23 and 23-24, Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board reduced costs for this program by managing the hardware ourselves, and thus reducing the expenses for Edwin to respectively $1.6 million that year and then $1.4 million in the subsequent year. Qualitative data has demonstrated that our intermediate students feel more engaged and responsible for their learning when assigned a device that accesses Edwin during school and after school hours. Homework, assignments, and projects can be completed in this digital environment. Quantitative data on the impact of Edwin on student achievement is ongoing as COVID impacted initial results. Usage data provides insight into the relevance of materials used and where support is needed for teachers with professional development that addresses our student needs. This data has informed our device ratio strategy that we're currently dealing with. Edwin has provided our students with culturally responsive, up-to-date, and extensive curriculum resources. We can correct errors almost instantly when they're brought to our attention, which was something we could not do in a print environment. The platform continues to provide updated interactive tools and experiences targeted specifically for Dufferin Peel students. It's providing feedback, intervention, and next steps for work. Updated dashboards provide important information for teachers to customize and respond to their classroom needs. STEM activities, information, and experiences are prioritized with Edwin. The product has ensured the cost of purchasing relevant text for the intermediate division does not become prohibitive given the change in the publishing industry's approach to textbooks. A virtual learning experience environment is an essential one to keep our students competitive in a world that is more and more being influenced and created by virtual technologies. The program department continues to critically review products such as Edwin for their value and cost effectiveness in ensuring our students experience the best Catholic education we can give them. That concludes the report, and I am going to do my best to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Question by Trustee Darrell D'Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you, thank you for this report, and it's interesting to see how the cost came down from 21-22 at 3.4 million to current 1.4 million. I believe we are not going to use devices provided by the company. We're going to buy our own devices. So this cost, I assume, of 1.4 million is our devices, just the Edwin material. Am I right?
So through the chair, that is the costing for us to buy the Edwin platform. And to explain the Edwin platform, the best way I can explain it is by purchasing the Edwin platform, what program is providing, what the board is providing for our students is the textbooks for those 3 grades across the system. And when we look at the costs of buying textbooks and keeping them up to date, it is an efficient way at looking at keeping our students with the appropriate current materials.
I agree with that. 1.4 million is fine from a cost which was at 3.4 coming down to 1.4. That's good. Have we looked at the per student cost? If we assume that 6, 7, and 8, ballpark number, 75 students per school, 125 schools, 9,175 students. 1.4 million divided by 9,175 students is around $158 per student per year. Is that what we would be spending on textbooks? Or if we did not use Edwin, we just bought the software, I mean the e-books and put it on our servers? Would it still be $158 per student per year, or be far less than that?
So through the chair, based on the product presentations that I have been given by different companies for different textbooks, it would cost us significantly more. The publishing industry has changed their format, as you well know, not only to the online textbooks, but it's a service renewal of those licenses. And depending on the company, you may have access to be able to print out a textbook for a shorter period of time, and then you have to renew the license. And my experience, quite frankly, is that every time you go to renew, the costs are significantly higher.
How often do textbooks change? Do they change every year, every 2 years, every 5 years, on an average?
So through the chair, it's a difficult question to answer, so I'll do my best. Many of the publishing companies' materials have been outdated because they wait for the curriculum updates before they do anything. Then they print their materials or they create their materials, send that out, and that's what you're purchasing. But because of the rate of change in knowledge and because of the changes politically and also societal changes, it's become very important that whatever materials are produced reflect what the current situation is quickly, or it becomes a litigious situation for that publishing company. So I would say that print books, my experience as an educator, they had a lifespan anywhere from 5 to 15 years, depending on your budgets and what the publishing companies were putting out. Now, as an educator, looking at the policy changes and what's going on in the world, I would say that realistically, the world that these students live in, that textbook has a lifespan of 2 years. I'll give you an example of a situation that I dealt with. There was a teacher that wanted to use a specific textbook, fantastic textbook for this course, till we looked up the political affiliations of the writer. There is absolutely no way a Catholic board would have that writer as an author of a text we're using. So there's a ramification that never in my lifetime would I think that I'd have to look at the political and the online presence of a writer. So there are a lot of advantages to this virtual world, and the cost effectiveness of Edwin at this point far surpasses if we were to do deals with different companies. But we're constantly reviewing that because we're constantly invited to companies to review their products, and they have a particular interest in having Dufferin Peel's opinion because we have developed a reputation of not only being very thorough and honest in our evaluation of the materials, but it has been my observation that when they engage with Dufferin Peel, they make a lot of money with other boards and school districts after we've done what my team does with the materials.
I'm not advocating for paper. All I'm saying is just look at the cost from a per student perspective per year that we are spending on Edwin and compare it to the market to see if we can get something different or cheaper. Just a recommendation. I mean, at the end of the day, you'll need to decide what's in the best interest of the students. That's why we are here.
Through the chair, that is something that we will continue to do, and we pay particular attention. We're painfully aware of the costs.
Just have a look at the numbers I just threw out. The math makes sense. And if there's something better in the market. But thank you very much. I think you're doing a fabulous job.
Thank you very much, Trustee Darrell D'Souza. Next, I have Trustee Stefano Piscucci. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the report. When there is a
Sorry.
When there's a 6-7 split and a 6 or 5-6 split, or it's just a straight 6 in the same school, are teachers provided the exact same access to the exact same material? So 6-7 split, the 6s will have the Edwin material, the Edwin computers, straight 6, or the 5-6 won't. So do students, first of all, do students have access to the Edwin computers in grade 6 as their counterparts do in the other class? And does a teacher have access to the same textbooks as the teacher that's in a 6-7 split?
So through the chair, the difference between the 6 and the 6-7 split is that because of the nature of the 6-7 split, that class has been assigned the actual hardware. A straight 6 would not have the hardware. However, the teacher has access to the licenses for the textbooks and the materials. In a split class and in a straight class, although you're covering the same curriculum, the way that you're going to present that curriculum would be different because you're dealing with that split scenario, although in some certain subjects you're not going to combine it. The teachers should be working together in those schools to make sure that our students are having equitable experiences of the material. But at this point, we don't fund straight 6 classes for the Edwin.
So then what are the teachers teaching from in a straight 6 when a 6-7 has access?
Through the chair, they have the access to the Nelson materials in terms of the mathematics and the science, and the language arts program is supported through the same materials that are available in different ways. It may not necessarily, because it's a junior division, be focused on the Edwin curations and collections, because they are primarily ones that we're looking for more the 7 and 8 in the intermediate. So again, that would be a conversation between teachers in the same grades, that students are experiencing equitable materials and similar materials.
Thank you. Madam Director, through you, Mr. Chairman, can you ensure that this is communicated to principals? To ensure that teachers that are teaching at grade 6 that are not part of a 6-7 have access to the exact same material, please?
Through the chair, I will.
Thank you. And make sure they have their licenses, like a license and not maybe using somebody else's. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Stefano Piscucci. We have any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may just add something.
Sure. We have Trustee Mario Piscucci.
Thank you. Back to Trustee D'Souza. What's happening is that as my former life, if you will, in terms of education, the fact of the matter is that I find that books are about, especially business books, are about 2 to 3 years at probably best to sit down the counter. But what's really caused a lot of issues is the post-COVID and what's happening relative to communications, relative to consumer acceptance of products and stuff of that nature. So I would suggest that at best, maybe 2-3 years, and that's really pushing it in terms of quality that's still attainable and still applicable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Trustee Mario Piscucci. Any more questions from trustees? Seeing no questions, once again, thank you very much for that presentation. Next, we move on to item G5, which is International Women's Day. Last presentation by Superintendent Murphy.
So through the chair, thank you. International Women's Day is recognized on March 8th annually. This day originated over 100 years ago as part of a movement to elevate equality for women globally. Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board will participate in International Women's Day through information and activities shared with our elementary and secondary schools produced by the Program Learning Services Department and the Equity Department. The Government of Canada's International Women's Day Learning Toolkit will be appropriately used in junior through intermediate grades. In particular, we are going to focus on the accomplishments of leadership that have been exemplified by our Catholic women. A conference is also being organized with and for our secondary students to recognize the importance of contributions of women to humanity. We are meeting with students this week to put in the fine details of what that conference will look like, and we will be inviting our secondary students to participate in that. That concludes this report at this time, and I am very happy to answer any questions about International Women's Day.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Carmel Murphy. Do we have any questions in reference to this presentation? Seeing no questions, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I'm a little slow here.
Yes, Trustee Del Rosario.
Yes, I just have a, well, first of all, thank you, Superintendent Murphy, for this report. And I know I have had some students wanting to volunteer to be part of this committee to organize the event. So my question is, have we decided on the location, or are we having it in a school? And the grades that we are inviting?
So through the chair, we have developed a framework for this conference. We tentatively have a site and date booked and a tentative speaker. But before program department, or before I sign off on any of this, we want to run all of these details by a group of young women that represents all of our families. So what program has done is invited one representative from each of our families from whatever high school was able to put their name forth to come in and discuss with us on Thursday some of their ideas and expectations for what this day would look like. We also want to run the speaker by them that we have tentatively sourced out for this day. I think the young ladies, the students, will be particularly impressed with the framework that we've developed, but I would not be so bold as to finalize anything until my team garnered their reaction and their input to this day, because it's a day of empowerment. And also I want to hear from their leadership, because I know that their involvement in a conference like this will be most useful for their leadership experiences as they're applying to post-secondary and institutions and jobs.
That is wonderful. Thank you. I'm looking forward to that event. And I know a lot of our secondary students will be participating, just like when they were participating at the mayor's breakfast for International Women's Day. So I look forward to that. And thank you again, Superintendent Murphy, for working on this, and with your staff as well.
Thank you. Very much. Trustee Del Rosario, any more questions or comments in regards to this presentation?
Mr. Chairman, please.
Yes, Trustee Mario Pascucci.
Thank you. A number of years ago, the board passed something for late September, early October for recognition of a similar idea in terms of Women's Day, but not at the level, of course, of the communities, if you will. But I thought it was just to be done sometime. There's a plan to, or there was a plan, or there was a an arrangement to do something for female programming, not programming, was female involvement in terms of something in late September, early October. I'm just trying to remember. It's a bit sketchy because I know there was some requests for what's happening at the school level and things of that nature. So I'm going to leave it to you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know who to direct it to, but so can you find out who I should send it to, please? This issue.
To the chair, I believe it was the annual proclamation that originated through Trustee Stefano Pascucci that we do every year.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mary.
Very much, Trustee Mario Pascucci. Any more questions or comments in
No,
regards to this presentation?
I really thank the prompt reply. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Next, we move on to our next item, which is item H for trustees, committees, Administration reports requiring action, starting with item H1 of the Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association resolutions. We will be going through after the presentation, each one separately, getting a mover only for each motion. Executive Superintendent Vectorino.
Good evening again, everyone, and the report that I will be, the brief report that I'll be walking you through begins on page 39 of your agenda package. As we do every year, we, following communication from OXTA, provide opportunities for trustees to work alongside staff in preparing resolutions that will ultimately be shared at trustees' annual general meeting, which takes place in the spring this year for 2025. By February the 7th, we are asked, or all Catholic boards are asked, to prepare any resolutions that they would like to be brought forward for consideration at the AGM in terms of items of a provincial nature, which OXTA will use as a basis to petition the Ministry of Education to make changes to programs, supports, etc. Based, as we always do, on communication with trustees, appendices B and H of the report represent resolutions that have been requested by trustees to date. And as was mentioned by you, Mr. Chair, providing that trustees are comfortable with these resolutions, we would look to you for a mover for each. All of these would then come back at the board meeting for final approval before submission to OXTA, as I said, for February 7th. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Executive Superintendent Vectorino. Starting off with our resolutions, we do have a few comments prior to approving each one. So I'll start with the first one, ask if there's any comments by trustees, and then ask for an approval for a mover. Starting with the first recommendation, we're looking at the first resolution, which is funding to support additional supervision. Do any trustees have any comments in regards to this? Trustee Bria Corbett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I'm just wondering if we can include some language around vaping and vandalism, because those are major concerns in with respect to the need to support additional supervision and reference to Catholic Code of Conduct. So my suggestion would be to say in the first whereas, these include physical aggression, verbal threats, cyberbullying, vaping, vandalism, and other forms of disruptive behavior that contravenes Catholic Code of Conduct. And then in the next whereas, if we could add mental health, so these behaviors jeopardize the safety, mental health, and well-being of students. And negatively impact the overall learning environment. And then in the bottom, therefore be it resolved. Increase dedicated supervision in schools to proactively address and prevent such incidents of student behavior and support healthy school climates. Those would be my suggested amendments. I'm happy to send them.
Through the chair, can you send them
Yep.
to Superintendent Vectorino? We'll make
Absolutely.
sure that they're amended for the board meeting agenda.
Absolutely.
So taking into account that these are the amended comments to this resolution, could I get a mover that the Faith and Program Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees to approve the submission as revised? Number one, funding to support additional supervision, resolution to OXTA. Moved by Trustee Paula Damato-Giano. Let's see. Any opposed? All in favor? Perfect. Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Next, we move on to our second resolution, which is the technology funding. Do we have any comments in reference to this? Trustee Bria Corbett?
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman. So there's the first whereas, which is technology is progressively more prevalent and infused throughout curriculum delivery. Can we add some changes to the second whereas Technology provides students with equitable access to 21st century inquiry-based learning and supports Catholic digital citizenship and student achievement.
Any other comments in reference to this resolution? Seeing none, we're moving to the approval of this submission that the Faith and Program Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees to approve submission technology funding as revised, resolution to Oxta. Could I please get a mover? Moved by Trustee Bruno Ionica. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none carried, we move on to our next resolution, which is student transportation funding. Do we have any comments? Trustee Bria Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. These are all excellent resolutions, by the way. Can we add a few whereases before the language about regional programs? It seems to jump right into that. Whereas pursuant to Education Act RSO 1990, school boards may provide home-to-school transportation services for their students, whereas school bus transportation is an essential service for students to access safe and timely travel to and from school every day. Whereas the Ministry of Education's 2024-2025 core education funding for transportation services does not align with the cost of the distance criteria thresholds for student transportation. If you want to mention the funding eligibility based on home to school distance is 0.8 kilometers or more for kindergarten, 1.6 kilometers or more for grades 1 to 8, and 3.2 kilometers for grades 9 to 12. And then you would go into the funding for the transportation for regional schools.
Director Mazzardo.
Through the chair, can you please read your second whereas? Because I think it was proposed and staff eliminated that for a reason.
Oh, okay. My second whereas school bus transportation is an essential service for students to access safe and timely travel to and from school every day.
Yeah, staff had concern with the connection that was being made between bus service and being essential for students to safely arrive at school. And that's why we had removed it.
Okay. Through the chair, we do have families that need school bus transportation and do rely on it.
Through the chair, we can go back and work through that and work offline with you, but as currently referenced, our concern was it was stating something that might create a liability for the board.
So are we doing any revisions to this resolution, Trustee?
Through the chair, I would suggest maybe don't move it. We'll bring it directly to board where it can be dealt with there.
We're going to skip this resolution when it comes in reference to student transportation, moving to the next one, which is funding for retrofitting and renovating schools. Do we have any comments or suggestions in regards to this resolution? Seeing none, could I get a mover for the Faith and Program Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees to approve the submission funding for retrofitting, renovating schools resolution to Oxta, moved by Trustee Thomas, and all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none carried. We move on to the next resolution, which is funding to lower class sizes in grades 4 through 8. Do we have any comments or changes to this resolution? Trustee Bria Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through you, can we add some language around engagement and collaboration? So whereas smaller class sizes foster a productive and more engaging learning environment with fewer disruptions, more collaboration, and ensures that instructional time is maximized. And then add some language around academic performance, whereas smaller class sizes contributes to stronger academic performance and student achievement.
Director Mazzardo.
To the chair, again, the concern around that is that that's not necessarily even supported in research. So I'd be careful about making that kind of statement, which does not have a fact, it's not based in fact. Just because it's a smaller class size doesn't mean you're automatically going to see an increase in student achievement.
Are we going to be bringing this one back to the board meeting or
More
Uh,
revisions or?
Through the chair, if you want us to do more changes to it, we can work with the trustee and bring it directly to the board meeting. So you wouldn't move it this evening.
Are all trustees okay with that? All right, we move on to the next resolution, which is review moratorium on school closures. Do we have any comments or changes in regards to this resolution? Seeing none, could I get a mover that the Faith and Program Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees to approve submission, review moratorium on school closures resolutions to OXTA?
I move, Mr. Chair.
Moved by trustee Del Rosario, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Next, we are looking at our last resolution for this evening, which is review of policies on trustee attendance at board meetings. Do we have any comments or suggestions in regards to this resolution?
Question, Mr. Chairman, for me.
Trustee Mario Pascucci?
Yes, I have a number of items I'd like to address on this. A couple of comments that I'd like to make, and then terms or ideas, and then we can talk about it. I'd like to not vote on it tonight and bring it back to board if it's possible. Here's some preamble, if not preamble necessarily, but areas of consideration that our staff hopefully can put it within the context of the presentation, et cetera. A reasonable person consideration, in other words, and here it is, Mr. Chairman, if someone is expecting to join the group of trustees that they have, the idea that a typical person would expect that people do have regular times away from the office, if you will, from in the sense that they can't get to meetings and things of that nature. So the idea of reasonable, I'm not saying one is no, I am saying one is a horrible number. What I'm saying is 3, 2, 3 is more reasonable in a row and things of that nature. So this way here, the people are given the opportunity to make sure they have the option and opportunity to make specific meetings. I'm sorry, that's my announcement. There's some emails coming in. I just haven't been able to turn off the machine. So if you hear it clinging away there, that's my machine. Second thing is that, I'm sorry, that was a reasonable person situation. And the idea too of the effectiveness of a board electing someone as trustee with this regular changes, if anybody decides to leave, one, you'd have to find a Catholic to replace a Catholic trustee within that Catholic environment, within a Catholic ward, number one. But number two, the fact of the matter is that you may be hard pressed to get somebody, and usually elections provide the opportunity to people to come forward and say, I can do this job as well and represent people as well as anybody else. So that's another one, Mr. Chairman, if I may. The next one is, Mr. Chairman, if a person is considered vacating a seat, the question is who will pay for the by-election, or will it be a by-election at the beginning? That's fine. The cost is anywhere between $200,000 to $300,000. That will be putting an encumbrance on our board or any board that's out there that has to fund that amount into an election, because we are then forced to either elect or appoint, and appointments tend to happen towards the back end of a motion and of a time at the board. And as a consequence, again, talks about representation. And that brings us to the effective representation, because the fact is that person ran. I don't know what just caused this issue. I think I know why, but I'm not gonna bring it out. But the thing is that, the reality is that people have the right to put their names forward, and you cannot control the world and say to people, no, you're not good enough to stay there, especially when some people have not, as someone said in the table before. There's people at the legislature and House and other municipal offices, etc., that do not attend regular meetings, and that is more or less being punitive, if you will, on the trustees, which are probably one of the closest groups to the community when it comes to environment. Another item, Mr. Chairman, is the idea of if somebody does miss an appointment and they're sick, that would require the individual to go get a doctor's note. And that's not practical because a lot of doctors don't want to sign notes for $20. So who's paying the $20? I just want to know that, et cetera. Another one, Mr. Chairman, if I may, is that, I'm sorry, I can't read my notes here. Just bear with me. Yes, board approval. If the community has affected somebody on the table, could you imagine anybody around this board saying, I designate trustee so-and-so not to be on the board approval, and then we have to vote on that? What right do we have to infringe on somebody's right to represent, which is fundamental to the cause of anything in terms of advocacy and support and changes? The idea, just bear with me, Mr. Chairman, about 30 seconds here. Central policy, got that, Mr. Chairman. Um, I think I'm done, Mr. Chairman, on this one. Just bear with me one second. If I can bring these things forward, these items forward to the superintendent involved, I think that's Alex. Sorry, so if we can bring that out, it'd be really, really nice. The fact of the matter is that we've done a lot, and I want to continue pushing the button, if you will. The last item, Mr. Chairman, which I know there's already one in plan right now that talks about public and separate school support. I'd like to bring it forward because this has been traditional for Duck and Peel to continuously to do this. I'm going into, it's almost a personal item, if you will. I'm going into a number of years, into those 18, 19 years, been pushing this thing. And it's important to everybody to realize that Catholic schools are run by ratepayers who are Catholic. And the fact of the matter is that, you're Catholic or you're designated Catholic when you buy a house, et cetera. So I'd like to move that forward, Mr. Chairman. So thank you for your patience. Sorry for the information in the background, and talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Mario Pascucci. To the same point, I have Trustee Stefano Pascucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not a change, it's more of a comment to what I mentioned before when this first came up. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Our own MP, our own premier missed 2/3 of the vote. We missed one. How did we get kicked out of office when 2/3 of the vote have not been done by the premier? So just a comment. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chairman, if I just may add one item more. if I
Sir,
may.
I will, I just have Director Mazzarato to Trustee Stefano Pascucci's point, and then I'll have
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Through the chair, not so much to the point, just trying to capture what what both Trustee Stefano and Mario Pascucci are wanting to see in this resolution. I think the resolution does try to highlight, if we have to work on it more to make it more explicit, but I do think it tries to highlight the lack of flexibility in this legislation coming forward in the fall, even the legislation that is in place now that only allows for in-person at a board meeting. But the likelihood, because it is so punitive, for lack of a better word, the likelihood of trustees having to vacate their seat is probably elevated this way because now you miss one meeting. And what Trustee Pascucci is trying to identify is there's costs associated with replacement of that, because there is a likelihood that you may be faced with having to replace seats, and that you may be faced with having to replace seats more than once. If a trustee can only miss one meeting and there's not a lot of flexibility around that, there's a likelihood that you could be looking at a very disruptive term as a result of that. So we'll try and capture that in the whereases and bring that to the board meeting.
Thank you,
Nice.
Director Mazzarato. Trustee Mario Pascucci.
Yeah, and also I'd like to put in there too, the idea of control over a family. They don't realize that a family may only be able to go to an individual can only have holidays maybe in July, the second week of July. I don't know, make it up, whatever. And or has to be there and back. So in terms of effectiveness with family opportunities, in other words, because I have to be back by a certain meeting on the Tuesday, I can't get any discounts. I can't go away with my family and this kind of stuff. These are very fundamental to a personal response at the family level and why you run. Now, I'm not saying there are trustees out there that are angels out there. There are a lot of trustees who do whatever they want. That's fine. Let every 4 year, the right of that individual to put their name forward and someone to say, I disagree with you, and run against that individual. So that sort of brings it into the idea. But like I said, not only are they affecting the livelihood of that individual in terms of their dimension, their determination, if you will, to do something, they're also affecting the family unit, if you will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Trustee Mario Pascucci. Trustee Bria Corbett.
Thank you. And through the chair. So the second whereas seems really wordy with the repetition of effect and effective. It says the current legislation has the effective September 2025. And I'm wondering maybe if we can combine the second, third, and maybe even the fourth whereas. Maybe saying something like changes in legislation effective September 2025 has the effect of penalizing a trustee who requires accommodation or flexibility to attend meetings virtually when an unforeseen circumstance arises. I think that may capture your 3 whereases.
I think we have to work on that because in fact, I think the interpretation of the current legislation would allow for a trustee to be excused because it's an unforeseen circumstance. So let us work through that.
All right.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Trustee Corbett. Trustee Anika?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, does that include work commitment? Because I'm not sure, but I think that the provincial government thinks that this is the only job trustees have. And if that was the case, I'd be in front of the church on my knees with a cup and with a sign that says, please help. Some of us do have full-time jobs.
Through the chair, the changes to the legislation do not contemplate that.
Well,
And so we can capture that, like, let us take that back. And I think we've got some really good feedback this evening that we know we need to capture in this.
who came up with this?
Honestly, it wasn't me.
Oh, trust me, Marianne, I know for sure it wasn't you, but what dingbat came up with this? Like, do they not know what trustees actually do in life and what they get paid or don't get paid? I mean, I'm not complaining about the pay because we signed up for what it is, but in reality, somebody that has no idea about the role of a trustee is making a decision with maybe somebody else that has no idea. And now you've got legislation or policy that makes no sense and just upsets every single board of trustees, unless in some cases, I mean, I think Mario made a point that if somebody wanted to take a vacation because they retired from their full-time job, but happens to be during that time when there's a board meeting, God forbid, they have to take a helicopter, fly back to Toronto, they would sit on the board meeting, and then, I mean, it's moronic.
Well done.
Thank
Mr.
you very
Chair-
much, Trustee Anika. Any more questions or
yeah,
comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I may just, I think this issue's been done, and Bruno, I don't know what they're doing at downtown, but yeah, regarding the reapplyment of the TIC program where you do designations, again, back with another motion. I know there's, like I said, to repeat myself, there's already one on a previous motion, but I would like Dufferin Peel to be consistent with it all possible. Thank you, Mariana. Looking forward to meeting with you and your staff on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Mario Pascucci. Do we have any other comments in reference to this resolution? Seeing none, this resolution will be brought back to the board meeting. We're moving on to our next item. Thank you very much, Executive Superintendent Veccarino, for those resolutions. Our next item is item I, additional business. We have no additional businesses this evening. Do we have any notices of motion? I see no notices of motion. Next item is item J, questions asked by trustees. Do we have any questions this evening? Trustee Paula?
Good evening, and thank you, and through the chair. On February 20th to 23, the Religious Education Congress will once again be held in Anaheim, California. I'll just read off the website. Gather with a global community of believers, religious educators, and ministry professionals. Renew your faith and spirit, experience transformative workshops, meaningful connections, and engaging liturgies. Celebrate your Catholic faith. Last year was my first attendance at this convention as a professional development opportunity, and I found this event very enlightening. Last year, I made an in-depth report of the convention, as well as the fascinating speakers I had the opportunity to enjoy. As this conference is on our approved list of professional development opportunities, I am asking if the trustees who are interested in attending this professional development opportunity to be approved to attend again this year.
Thank you very much, Trustee Paula. Was that just a comment? Or
I'm asking if the trustees who are interested in attending this professional development opportunity to be approved to attend again this year. And we have a vote?
I would
Uh,
reference this back to Director Mazzarato. Isn't
Well,
the LA Religious Congress already an approved conference for the trustees?
To the chair it is, but there was some communication to all the trustees. Similar action has been taken for senior staff. We've paused attendance at conferences, personal conferences or conferences such as that, especially as it being out of North America. I don't want to speak for the trustees, but at the end of the day, it's the chair of the board that approves the expenses that a trustee incurs. So I'm not sure if the chair would like to address this.
Trustee Del Rosario?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Mazzarato. As I said in the email that I sent out to all of you, which I copied, as much as I would like to approve this, I think we are in a situation where the ministry is conducting audits of all school boards. And based on the teleconference we had with the ministry and the ministry staff, and then Director Mazzarato even followed up with the ministry to ensure what conferences we can attend. And the advice that we receive, or the advice that Director Mazzarato received, was basically any Canada conferences that we've normally attended is okay, but be reasonable in other conferences. They don't want to tell you directly, but they're basically saying, be reasonable, because they're now doing an audit. And that's basically the gist of the response I sent to Paula. Now, it's up to all of you whether you want to do it, but I also don't want to approve it. I'm not going to approve it because at this point in time, all school boards are being audited. Do we want to be in the same newspaper as the others have? I know it's been approved, but take a look at some of the conferences that they've done. Some are just close by and they still question it. So that's the background of it. And Director Mazzarato put on a lot of contacted the surrounding areas, and basically those that are attending or were attending the religious education in LA have paused as well this conference for this year, at least for this year, and or until the audit is done.
Thank you, Trustee Del Rosario. I have Trustee Devoto-Chudivats. Did you want to go back to this comment or allow Trustee Darrell D'Souza to? So
Speak together.
I can allow you to respond, and then Trustee Darrell D'Souza.
So my response to that would be that thank you, Trustee Del Rosario, for your comment. However, I do have availability within my budget to attend professional activity, and I do have availability in my budget to attend this professional activity conference, professional development activity conference. That's my comment. Like I do have the money reserved in my expenses to attend. It's not completely unreasonable, and it hasn't been unreasonable in the past. So that's my comment in return. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Paula. Trustee Darrell D'Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through you, what I need to understand is there a document come out from the ministry saying that travel outside Canada is not permitted?
Through the chair, you'll recall the focus back in the fall of some travel that was happening within boards, whether it was trustees or whether it was senior staff, which resulted in a conference call with chairs and directors of education. And the result of that as well was a memo that came out. At that time, they talked about Canada. They only talked about travel within Canada and reasonable travel within Canada. I reached out to ministry staff to get clarification around United States travel because we do have conferences. So I need to make this clear as well. This isn't about whether or not you've got funding available. Senior staff have in their contracts the opportunity to attend a personal conference on an annual basis as approved by the director. And so it's not necessarily about the funding that's available because we do invest in professional development. Professional development is important. But at that time, the advice that was given was the optics of travel at this time was sensitive. And as referenced, boards are waiting audits. We're awaiting audits because the Minister of Education directed that school boards be audited for their discretionary spending. And we anticipate that there's probably going to be further direction. They've already started or announced the audits for a couple of school boards. And we would anticipate that as they work their way through audits, we will likely get more direction. At the end of the day, I, as the Director of Education, would approve any of the expenses associated with any staff that attended conferences, and the chair of the board approves any of the expenses associated with trustees. Given that advice, I decided that I was pausing it. Quite frankly, until I have more clarity, and because I didn't get a positive response from the ministry or confidence that if we proceeded with our practices, and that does not take away from the fact that these are incredibly important professional development opportunities. That doesn't mean that this is over. In fact, the LA conference is probably the only conference where you can access strong theological presenters as well as the pedagogy. So at some point, we can go back at those discussions if we have to, depending on the outcome from ministry audits. But I'm not prepared to be the one whose name in the paper after the ministry is given a caution has just gone ahead and participated or allowed staff to participate in conferences. And so I can't speak for the chair, but because the chair would be the one who would be named as the one approving, because you would remember that when there was a lot of coverage in the media in the fall around a number of boards, the question that was always being asked was, who approved these? Who approved these?
Yeah, yeah. I do not want to have my name on the paper as well as approving something that we are not certain that we should be doing. So that's one of the reasons why I did say I highly recommend, but really, I don't want to be in that paper with that situation.
How long are we looking at these audits? I mean, the audit for 72 boards can take 7 years.
Or the possibility is they may be auditing a few boards and once they've identified maybe some commonalities or have some indication of the direction they want to give to other boards, they would proceed with that. We have an upcoming code and e-code meeting. I can certainly, raise that on the agenda with my colleagues. But I did check with my colleagues in other boards, even boards who had not attended that particular conference in the past that was looking forward to sending representation this year, that have decided not to until we have more clarity.
Thank you very much, Director Mazzarato and all our trustees. Do we have any other questions in reference to this matter? No. Any other questions questions asked by trustees? Student trustee Raheem White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you, my question is in regards to G2 on the agenda. Through you, Mr. Chairman, are the benchmarks Dufferin Peel benchmarks or ministry benchmarks as it pertains to supporting students' reading development.
Through the chair, those would be our results based on a standard assessment. So that assessment would be the same assessment. It would be in relation to that assessment's standards. So the results that you would have, you're talking about our results, 80% for kindergarten, whatever. That's the actual results of our students who were assessed using a commercial standard assessment that was approved by the Ministry of Education. So other boards may be using that assessment as well. I think you had a choice from a very small list of assessments you could use.
The reason I asked the question is, personally, I spent the majority of my academic life outside of Canada. And in my humble opinion, 44% does sound very low.
It is low. That means only 44% of our grade 1 students met the benchmark, which means that now we're into what are we going to do about it mode. But the other thing that is a puzzle is you have 80% of kindergarten students at the beginning of the year, which sounds great, right? 80%. But then you get into grade 1, it's dropping down. So what's happening between the rest of kindergarten and getting in grade 1, right? So that's causing us to really reflect on what do we need to do to support our educators, and also what do we need to do to support those students that didn't meet that benchmark.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Student Trustee Rahim Waite. Do we have any other questions by trustees? Trustee Bria Corbett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you, I have 2 questions. One's from parents about the cold weather. I know we can't control the weather. Parents have reached out to express concern about the mandatory outdoor time for students during extreme weather conditions. And I know we had some really cold days, especially with wind chill. Is there an opportunity to revisit the recommendations from Peel Public Health regarding our board's weather policy? I know
Through the
that-
chair, we can reach out to Peel Public Health to see whether or not they would change their recommendations. But, and I can review this with principals as well at the end of the month webcast, because we also are encourage our principals to look at other factors associated specifically with their school. Like they might be in a area where there isn't a lot of protection and there's a lot of wind, et cetera, right? And so principals have historically made decisions based on that, and may have even made accommodations for individual students for whatever reason. So A, we can start by going back and checking in with Peel Health. B, I can also do, some recommendations to the principals to be sensitive to the fact that there may be other conditions going on outside that might exceed the wind chill that might contribute to being a lot more inhospitable for our children to be outside.
Thank you. And through the chair, I know we have some school communities that are lower socioeconomic status and different demographics, and where some don't have proper winter clothing. So there are some special circumstances there as well.
And we can review that as well, but I would also say that a lot of those schools would also have extra mittens and hats and things like that on hand, but we will review that.
And through the chair, parents have asked, I know the cutoff is -20, but really it's very cold even when it's -18 or -17. Like really, what is the difference? So I'm just passing along that feedback, but thank you very much for following up with Peel Public Health. And then my next question through the chair is just with the secondary students preparing for exams starting next week. What's the expectation for schools with respect to major assignments and tests the week before? Because I've had parents reach out to say their child has for example, religion CPT, biology test, 2-day math CPT all this week. And these are very heavy courses. I don't have specifics in terms of which grade, but biology is usually a grade 11 or 12. So I am concerned about the amount of work, and these CPTs are usually 20, 30%. So weighted very heavily as well. So just wanted to ask if there's I don't know if there's an easy answer.
Through the chair, we do have a gap that specifically provides advice that they shouldn't be putting major assignments together, nor should they be asking for major assignments very close to exam period. So perhaps maybe an offline conversation with the superintendent. I'm not sure if this is just very specific to that school or whether, so it may be just a conversation with administration at that school, or is it a wider problem? Is it a wider problem?
I think it's a wider problem.
So we will do a reminder to the system.
Thank
that
you
you're
very
at the
much.
table.
Thank you very much.
Do our student, sorry, not that I want to chair, but did our student trustees want to comment or share their experiences or provide any feedback that might help inform these conversations?
Certainly, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, we have heard those concerns at our Senate meetings. And it's unfortunate because some of our teachers try to do their CPTs before the Christmas break. So coming back, we have enough time to prepare, but it's obviously not all. In fact, the majority save the CPTs until we come back. And mind you, we only have 2 weeks after coming back before exams start. And I can tell you, I have all my CPTs this week.
Mhm.
We'll get a memo out tomorrow.
Student trustee Klein?
Through the chair. Also, just I'm looking at our student Senate reports, and under student concerns, almost everyone has listed the fact of exam stress. Everyone, I think it's across the board that most of our students are feeling that. I mean, personally, I have a math CPT tomorrow and the next day, and then that brings us to like 3 days before exams. Insane. So I think it's definitely across the board.
Perfect. Thank you very much, student trustee Klein. Do we have any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Corbett?
I just have a follow-up question regarding this. So in light of the fact that these dates are already, these assignments and these CPTs have already been assigned, I don't know if there's a lot in the way of flexibility at this point. But my hope is that if there's some clear communication to the system around what the expectations are, that in the upcoming June exams and time that we're a little bit more proactive of it, and perhaps that homework guideline can be shared with parents as well, so everybody's on the same page, because I know there's a lot of questions around that.
Thank you, trustee Corbett. Director Mazzarotto?
Through the chair, yes. Short answer is yes.
Student trustee Gia Sharma?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. And to your point, trustee Corbett, I feel like if like teachers give us CPTs or assignments or tests, like starting the week, coming back from break, and then it continues on to the second week, that's helpful as well. But if you give it in the second week and then I'm studying for exams at the same time of doing my CPTs, it's like, do I pick one?
Director Mazzarotto? I'm assuming that you'll be looking into this.
Through the chair, we're very disappointed in what our students are sharing with us because we've messaged this many, many times, and it's regrettable that this is what you're undergoing, but we will message it out and we'll be more proactive in messaging it for second semester.
Thank you very much, student trustee Klein.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just one more thing to mention. I think a lot of the issue surrounding this is the fact that teachers are running out of time. They feel like they don't have enough time to fit in all the curriculum and stuff that needs to be finished. Like I did a math into this week. So I think that's surrounds some of the issue, and I don't know if there's anything we could do about that, but I think that would be the main, I guess to call it kind of an excuse, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but around why everything gets pushed so late. So I don't know if anything.
I guess we could shorten the holidays if you'd like.
Mm-mm.
I'm not trying to be flip, but we'll look into it.
Thank you very much, Director Mazzarato, and for your input, student trustees. Do we have any other questions by trustees? Seeing no questions online nor in person, we move on to our next item. We have no declared interest items this evening. We have no in-camera session this evening, and we have no reports from the in-camera meeting. Our next future meeting is on March 4th, 2025. And could I get a mover for adjournment? Moved by trustee Anisha Thomas. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none.